Welcome to the 20th episode of Nice Ashes. I'm Nate.
And I'm Mike. So what are we smoking today, Nate?
Oh man, you're going to make me pronounce it. This is the Rocky Patel Edge Fuma, which is, as Mike tells me, made up of not the prime cuts of the tobacco, but maybe the leftovers.
It's a filler. Yep.
It's a filler. It's not. I mean, it's not like It's not tobacco that hasn't passed their grading scale. It's just they use the full thing to make the edge,
Yes.
and then they put the rest of it into the Fuma.
Yes.
So it might not be. We're going to find out. It may or may not taste the same as the cigar we smoked last episode.
Right. And anybody who's
see.
interested, you should look up the lore of the Fuma. It's kind of like a Fuma. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's kind of an interesting, cigar factory lore sort of thing. Kind of like the beginning of a cigarette.
And I will say, as I'm wetting the end here, the wrapper tastes different than the one we just previously smoked, because I got some spice off of the other wrapper. And this one, I think, is a little bit lighter.
It has a slightly lighter color as well.
Slightly lighter. Not drastically, but slightly lighter.
Yes. I was going to do a straight cut, but maybe I'll do a cross cut on this as well. I can't find my cutter.
Might as well compare apples to apples. Or apples to Fumas.
Yes. And I'm a, V-cut guy.
Can you believe we've done 20 episodes?
I can, because we've done one every week, pretty much, so.
I can believe it, because the numbers do not lie. It doesn't feel like 20, though.
No, I like it because it gives us an excuse to bullshit for, hour and a half.
Yeah.
And smoke a cigar.
And we only
moderately smoke a cigar at least once a week.
Yes. And we only moderately have to watch our fucking language.
Mm-hmm.
This one is not as intense, the first few puffs, as the last one. I can tell that right off the bat.
No, it is not. Sweeter, too.
Yeah.
You get a nice, initially, the nice sweetness, which is good. I like it. I have 20 of these, by the way, if you like them.
Hopefully you like it, too.
I'm a big fan of smoking a cigar while I mow the lawn.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of cheap. Well, these aren't really cheap. They are cheap. They're not super expensive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, the Fumas are going to be cheaper than the Edges.
Mm-hmm. Well, initially I like it.
Yeah.
It's lighter.
Yeah.
It's got a more interesting flavor profile, in my opinion.
I think so, too, yeah.
But we'll see. We shall see.
So we're going to talk about free Brittney, but not Britney Spears from her conservatorship. We're talking about the WNBA star player that's kind of captured the national media attention.
Is there really a hashtag free Brittney?
Not for the WNBA star, but when
okay.
Britney Spears was trying to get out of her abusive conservatorship, there was a big Free Britney movement and all of that, and she finally got out of that, and I think he's now being held liable for all the shit that he pulled. Her dad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was kind of weird when I heard about that. I thought that was pretty bizarre.
It's a weird legal thing that you can do to people. You can force them into a conservatorship against their will, even. So that might be a whole other episode.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm not about that. And but we're not talking about that anyway. We're going to talk about how to smuggle marijuana into Russia, or how not to.
Yes, how not to. That's a great way to put it.
So, and I think you were telling me you were of two minds.
Yes.
About the Brittney Griner situation, and I feel like I'm more of one mind, but I hope you are able to convert me or give me enough things to think about where I maybe have a mind and a half about it.
Sure. So I will start, I guess, the conversation. People are getting very emotional about Brittney Griner being sentenced to a pretty harsh prison sentence for something that is, in many parts of the United States, but not all, a fairly minor offense, if it's even against the law. Now,
Well, and a lot
in
of
the
times
United States, oh, go ahead.
go.
Go ahead, Nate.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, even if it's against the law in the United States, like the social and cultural stigmas around it are mostly gone. So even if it's against the law, the chances that the local police force is going to actually do anything other than just take it and throw it away and send you on your way,
Right.
pretty slim.
In the United States, it is a felony to bring marijuana onto a plane of any kind.
Yeah,
and if you
I've
get
never
caught,
done that.
I've never done it either, but I know that it's a felony. So, and I don't know what you would actually get sentenced. It probably would get thrown out. Who knows? But
So
I know. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
let's clarify. The TSA, their job is not to search for drugs. It's to search for things, weapons that will take down a plane. So if they
Yes.
find drugs and try and do something to you other than confiscate them and throw them away, you have a pretty strong court case, at least the last time I kind of did research on it, to get all of that kind of wiped out, because that's not in the perusal, just like the EPA apparently can't regulate things. The TSA, part of their mission statement is not to search for illicit drugs.
Yes. But it is nonetheless a felony. So there we go. I know one person who has a felony for marijuana possession, and he served a year in jail as a part
Okay.
of a felony conviction. And they charged him with drug trafficking because he was on a border town with that state where
Yep.
it's a felony to have marijuana. So, and he served prison time, just a standard dude. And he's a lifetime felon now. I have another friend who got caught with a bat box. And in the area we were at, a bat box was considered a felony there. Small possession
Okay.
was a misdemeanor, but a bat box was considered intent to distribute.
And so
And
just to
he
just
got
to
out
be
of it.
okay.
Go ahead.
So a bat box, that's the thing with like it's the little like wooden pocket box, then you fill like one
Yeah,
side
dugout
with
box or
the weed, like the one-y box.
it's the definition of personal use. Yeah, it's just a
Oh,
one
okay.
box. It's like a little
Yeah.
wooden dugout, and you pack a small amount in.
Yep.
Maybe an eighth, and then you have a one-hitter
Yep.
stash.
Okay. I just
And it
wanted to
wasn't
make
even
sure
his
we
bat
were on the
box.
same page.
It was my bat box that he had borrowed
Okay.
to go to a concert or something, and then he got searched by a cop illegally, and they charged him with a felony for it, and
Okay.
it got dropped
Yeah.
almost immediately. He did go to jail, and they did drop it. But in the United States, certain states, again, we live in an empire, and every
Yep.
state's kind of their own territory, and they all have their own marijuana laws. So in portions of the United States, having marijuana is a felony, and crossing a border is considered drug trafficking.
Okay.
So if you or I were to say go to Colorado and pick up some marijuana for personal use, not that we would ever do such a thing, and bring it
but
back to
also
Minnesota,
not that we would ever not do such a thing.
right? And if we were to get pulled over in the state of North Dakota with Minnesota plates, they would consider it drug trafficking there, and we'd be charged with a felony. And that's just the way it is there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Western rural, Republican states have very harsh marijuana laws.
Yeah.
And they do convict on that. Absolutely. They will convict you. And you will go to prison and you will have a felony with all the negative things associated with having a felony. You're not even allowed to have certain professional licenses in the United States if you have a felony.
Yeah. And you can't, if you're a felon, you can't vote, right?
You cannot vote. You cannot own a firearm. You can go hunting, but you can't own a firearm. Interesting. There's a lot of interesting things you have to put up with a felony from a marijuana charge.
Yeah.
So the Brittney Griner thing, I'm of two minds because I don't agree with marijuana being illegal.
Yes.
However, the United States government has no position or is in no position to say that they're being harsh or whatever, charging her with uh, trafficking. Because we, as citizens here, get charged with drug trafficking constantly for personal use marijuana.
Yeah.
And we as a citizenry get charged with felonies, and we as a citizenry go to prison, and then we have our future limited. You know, you can't have the professional license that I hold and have a felony. They'll
Yep.
revoke your license. Doesn't matter that you went to school. Doesn't matter that you passed the test. None of that background matters. You know, they don't care. You cannot have it if you're a felon. Impossible.
Yeah.
So she, Brittney Griner, tried to use her fame and wealth to get away with a crime. And I'm sure that she's gotten away with it before.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would never bring marijuana or paraphernalia onto a plane.
Well,
Ever.
so I did. I did, though. I did. But it was a domestic flight.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a vape cartridge. And the only way to know if it's marijuana in there or tobacco is to take a big old fat rip off that vape. Like it doesn't smell like weed.
Right.
It doesn't, and it's like, but you know what I did that Brittney didn't do, or maybe Brittney did. I don't know. I don't know her. Is I researched. Does the TSA, are they going to care about a vape? Like, as long as you're not smoking it on the plane, they don't have the time to check every single vape cartridge if it's tobacco or weed. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't have the time. And if it's not going to harm the plane, like, who cares? It's a felony. I don't know. Is it a felony to smoke a cigarette on a plane even? Like, there's lots of things that are, like, not good to do on planes. And I wasn't bringing it to smoke it on the plane.
Right.
It was just, we were going down to St. Louis for a wedding, and it was like, hey, whatever. But I brought it there, and I brought all my pipes and my pipe tobacco and everything. And I would just put it all together and put it through, and they're like, oh, yeah, okay. He's got pipe tobacco pipes. And I went and I smoked my pipe on the balcony of the place we were staying, and it was great because it was like middle of winter here, but it was like 60 degrees there. But I did the research, and I looked at what the risk would be and what the punishment would be for the risk, and if it was calculated or not. And I was like, you know what? The worst they're going to do is like toss it in the trash. So I'm not going to get sentenced to 9 years in the gulag. But now if I were flying overseas, no. And if I'm flying to fucking Russia, absolutely not. I'm not even going to bring like a book that talks about weed. You know what I mean?
Right. I have an interesting story. I think I told you. I'm not sure if I talked about it on the podcast.
Your
but
lighter?
I went on an international flight about my lighter. Yeah.
Yeah, you talked about it on the podcast, but you can say it again because
it's
relevant.
The lighter story.
It's relevant.
It is relevant. And like I say, that when I first got on the plane in Minot to go all the way to India, that guy grabbed my ball sack because the TSA agent knew that once I got on that plane, I wasn't leaving the airport basically for 36 hours. So he made sure I did not have anything on me at all that was illegal. And the lighter was perfectly okay in the States. It was perfectly okay in France. It was okay in the Netherlands when I came back. But when I got to India, they pointed the gun right in my fucking face when they found that lighter on me. And I didn't even hide it. I just put it in the ashtray or whatever, with a little, tray. And he did not like that I had a lighter at all, obviously. You know? And it's like, well, it's not an issue with a domestic flight, but it is there. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That was probably I wouldn't say maybe, it might have been pre-internet days, but it was probably early internet days where people weren't really talking about literally everything.
It was pre what the internet is now.
We had
no method to find out the rules of Indian airports.
And I think that's what makes like the Brittney Griner thing. It's like, one, you're a WNBA star, and two, you can even ask Siri or Alexa And they'll probably bring you back the answer. Marijuana laws in Russia are stricter than you want to mess around with, you know?
Right. And also, now this is on top. So I'm building the case of why I don't really feel bad for her. We
Yeah.
have very harsh marijuana laws already
In
in
some
parts of
places,
the
yes.
country. In parts of the country, because it's all dependent on the states. Every state's got their own rules.
Yep.
Also, there's other people who are Americans in Russian prison for bringing marijuana into the country. We don't
Yep.
give a shit about them because they're not rich and they're not famous,
Yep.
you know, and that's just the way it is. So my sympathy is very limited as far as her being a lawbreaker. Now, I
Yeah.
don't think marijuana should be illegal, and I think it's bullshit that people get charged for anything related to marijuana.
Yes.
So I do think I think it's a load of crap. But the fact that they're trying to trade international arms dealers for a fucking basketball player, and then
That's what I was going
leave
to
the
say.
other people in prison like they don't matter because they don't
Yeah.
is typical of the Biden administration and the cultural zeitgeist of the United States. It's trash.
Yeah, and I would say, and I'm no huge Biden fan, and I'm no huge Trump fan, and I'm no huge Obama fan, and I'm no huge Bush fan, and all the way back. But I don't think it's necessarily fair to blame Biden
And
for
I'm not blaming him
trading.
personally.
No, I know, but I think it's like you said, the cultural, like it's our culture. We don't care that so and so went over there and is serving their 8.5 year of their 9-year sentence, or maybe they got 20 years because they're not a WNBA star, and they were just there and they got caught with weed and they're still rotting in the prison there, or they're doing manual labor, or who knows what they're doing. But all those people are just going to be stuck there, and they're going to trade somebody who's an arms dealer or like a legit confirmed terrorist. I don't know which, but it's like I was reading, they were talking about trading this one guy, and I'm like, just that guy doesn't, no, that's not a fair trade. We don't need more WNBA stars in America. We don't even need more NBA stars in America, okay?
Yes.
Like, what good do they do to the country? Nothing. It allows the government to give you entertainment that then you are worried more about, your sports ball team than you are about losing the Miranda rights being read to you. It makes you care more about that because you're fighting with your neighbors and your family about your favorite sports ball star.
I mean, the news loves to talk about the latest trans athlete that's playing in some chicken shit sport that the local governing body will, decide. It's yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I agree with you that it's absolute bullshit to be brought down on marijuana of all of the drugs out in the world. Marijuana is a really lame thing to vilify. But on the other hand, just because you're a WNBA star and more than 12 people know your name because you've, played professional sports ball, doesn't put you above the other people that are currently serving time in Russia for the same offense. And how many arms dealers or terrorists do we have in prison here that we could trade for every single one of them back? If Biden doesn't come back and say, we want Brittney and we want all the other people that are on marijuana charges, and then you get your one arms dealer back. Because you have to calculate it out. One arms dealer is not equal to one WNBA player. I don't think, because the arms dealer is going to go provide more arms for the fucking Russians or mob bosses or whoever the fuck. Who cares? And the WNBA star is going to shoot a basketball well high into a hoop. So it's not the same collateral damage. So then give us all of the weed people back. Give us all your stoners back, Russia, and you can have your arms dealer.
See, I want to disagree with your statement that marijuana is no big deal, because federally, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, which means that it has no viable use according to the federal government. So let's not be hypocritical here. According to the federal government, which the Biden administration could change today, marijuana has no use. No use,
Well,
according to them. And we all know that's a bunch of shit.
Well, it's
We
a
all
little
know
late
that's
in
a
the
lie.
day for them to make it legal today, but maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow might be a good day.
And yesterday was the right day. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But all the same.
Well, I guess, here's the question then. So if they trade, I don't know, is arms dealing, is that like a war crime?
I would say
Potentially.
I don't know.
It's up there, probably,
I
right?
don't know. I would think it would be, but I don't know.
You're
I'm not
in
in that
no, I know.
circle.
But like so when you say arms dealer, right? You're not thinking like the guy at Dick's Sporting Goods selling you a shotgun. This is somebody who provides like guns to cartels and terrorist groups and paramilitary organizations that do, less than savory things.
Right.
Okay.
They're arming terrorists. They're like a
so we're on the same page with
bank
that
or whatever. Yeah.
So we're on the same page with that. And there was a point that I had, but I don't remember now what it was. But like, it's not a nice guy that they're letting out. Oh, here's what I was going to say: is if you're giving, a terrorist enabler their freedom to go back to Russia, couldn't you make the argument then? Because if you're doing all of this to get a pothead out of Russian prison, wouldn't that say that the federal government kind of just legalized pot? Like, what's the other reason? Like, they don't care about any one single American citizen that much because there's other American citizens over there,
Right. It's like I say, the United States they don't have a position to defend as far as Russia arresting a basketball player for smuggling drugs into their country. What would happen to a Russian national that did the same here? It's hypocritical. It's hypocrisy at the highest point.
If they were a Russian WNBA star, you can damn well be sure that Putin would want them back. But if it was just a random Russian citizen, probably not.
Probably not. So
And that's probably the biggest issue, the biggest gripe with the whole thing. I saw a really long Facebook post, and I kind of stopped reading after the first sentence or two because it was like, here's an open letter to Brittney Griner from a bunch of Vietnam vets, and it was those kind of people get all super preachy about, we served the United States and you smoked pot and you play basketball, but we served the United States and you fucked up and we didn't, and and it's like, but it's not the same thing like going to Nam and napalming a bunch of like locals and then getting blown up because the government didn't have a plan to like win the war. Isn't the same thing as just trying to enjoy a plant that grows in the ground. And Vietnam is also not Russia, so you're really not even making any good comparisons. You're just trying to like bring up your fucking Vietnam bullshit again. But it's always the same thing with these like not Vietnam, but like the super rah-rah. We talked about the Blue Lives Matter people, and it's the people that, and I found that a lot of the people that are like, well, people actually served in Nam and they served in Afghanistan and they served here and there. And then you're asking, oh, okay, well, that's nice that you're supportive of the troops. You must have served, right? And they go, no, I never served. Well, then why you got the huge fucking boner for serving? Like, you never served. You don't know what it's like. Nobody I've ever talked to that served has a huge United States military complex boner, and they probably want Brittney free just as much as the next WNBA fan.
Well, talking about the super patriots is a totally different topic.
Yeah, but I feel like those are the ones that kind of like, but you can't ever really say that Vietnam letter that I read online, was it even written by a Vietnam vet? Probably not.
Probably not.
You could talk to anybody, Vietnam vet, and be like, who, hey, what do you feel about Brittney Griner? And they'd be like, who are you talking about? Like, I don't know that person.
Right. Well, I know we talked about this before off air, but my dad was a veteran and he was a Vietnam vet. He was in for 30 years and was a part of 7 active conflicts. He's got 7 conflict badges, and all of his friends were all military, all of them growing up.
Yeah.
And none of those guys were rah-rah America type people because they all knew how fucking corrupt it was. And they did their time.
Yep.
They chose to stay in the military, but their eyes were opened to the corruption in the system because of their time in the military. And for instance, my dad hates Donald Trump, didn't vote for him. Hates George Bush, didn't vote for him because they were draft dodgers.
Yeah.
Hates Bill Clinton, didn't vote for him because they were draft dodgers. And they're all that age where being a draft dodger for my dad was a no, absolutely would not vote for you, no matter what.
Yep.
And again, he's not like these has a Trump sticker on the back of their thing, make America great again, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of that flag waving is bullshit. It's all comp, it's overcompensation.
Yeah. So what do you think about draft dodging?
I mean, I probably would have been a draft dodger. I don't know.
Yeah. I think if you have money and status, it's a lot easier to draft dodge without any negative repercussions.
Right.
Because you can come up with whatever excuse you want or need. For me, I don't really want to go and fight in a war. Like that's not on my bucket list. And I know like a lot of people, if there's any veterans listening, they'll be like, wow, that wasn't on my bucket list either. And you sound like a entitled, millennial, and you want your avocado toast and you don't want to go have to look another man in the eye and kill him. And it's like, well, I don't want avocado toast, but I also don't want to go kill another person. Like that's not one of my life goals. And I'm not saying that anybody who's served that was one of their life goals. I mean, there's different senses of duties and things. But because of my medical condition, being a diabetic, I'm never going to see frontline combat level stuff anyway, even if I were drafted. So it's not really, I don't really feel like I can talk about draft dodging and the draft in any kind of meaningful way, because even if I got drafted, they'd put me somewhere else,
Right. Well, we're both to the age now where I don't think you can be drafted anymore. And I am very close to not being able to be drafted anymore.
See, the day I was able to be drafted, they sent me a fucking card in the mail and I had to fill it out. And if I'm too old to be drafted now, where's my card saying, congratulations, you made it?
Right.
I think that's just bad form on the United States government.
I still have my selective service card. I still have the physical card.
I'm sure I've got mine somewhere.
Yeah. I just found it. My mom gave me a bunch of papers from their safe to put into mine. And she kept it for me all these years. I know that my dad told me not to join. When I turned 17 or so, he had the talk with me about not joining the military, even though he was lifetime military. He was like, he was very against the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. He was strongly against it. And he worked for the military his whole life. So, if that guy's against it, it's probably a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like and we haven't had a war for a long time, heavy air quotes. We haven't declared war in a very, very long time, but we've had lots of wars.
Right.
But every war, every altercation, or every whatever they call it now, instead of war, just like they don't call it a depression, they call it a recession, or they'll call it a slight downtick, or whatever, whatever it is. But whatever they call them,
vets I knew, which were all my dad's buddies, and even some of them school teachers, were all trying to tell us not to join the military after September 11th.
Yeah,
because they could see the writing on the wall.
Whatever it is that they call what you and I would call a war, they seem to have been getting less and less and less justifiable.
Right.
As we move along.
I don't know. We haven't really had a justifiable war since World War II, probably. Arguably, World War II.
Well,
some people would argue even that wasn't justifiable from the American perspective.
Yeah, a lot of people would argue that, and I think it's kind of like some of the other stuff that we talked about, where it's the history has been colored by time and other people talking about it, because everybody was like, well, World War II was the last great war, the last really good war, and there was good stories that came out of it, and there was real acts of bravery, and there was And we were fighting for a reason. Like we had to overthrow the Nazis, but that's not why we joined
No.
the war. Like we didn't join the war to overthrow the Nazis.
Well, we joined the war effort long before we physically joined the war effort. We were selling munitions for years.
The same as the Ukraine-Russian thing.
Yes, it is.
We're
not selling them; we're giving them away. That's the problem.
Free. For free.
For free. We've spent enough money in Ukraine to solve homelessness in the United States, for fuck's sake.
Well, to solve homelessness and the student loan crisis.
I don't know about the student loan crisis. That's $1 trillion
here's the thing.
right there.
If we're just giving all these like missiles and things. Just here you go. And you know what? I haven't really heard any Republicans like be against that. But here you want to wipe the slate clean on all the student loan debt, and the Republicans are up in arms. Up in arms. And it's like, if you would have even just put what you gave to Ukraine and the bailouts to corporations into student loans, even if you're not wiping it clean for everybody, everybody's much happier. Our economy is much better. Everything's better here.
Oh, yes. I out of my friend group, I paid off my student loans, and I have one other friend who paid off his student loans. But everybody else who's my age or our age pretty much has student loans, and a lot of them. But a lot. We're talking a car payment, minimum a car payment worth a month.
Yeah.
And that's serious business, when you're talking about $600 a month, $700 a month.
The student loan companies don't care. They want what they want. And you don't really have much recourse.
No, you can't. You can't bank.
If you went private, like the federal loans have a lot of different options, and I would say are very good with their repayment plans and all of that. But the private loans, they don't care. They don't care about anything.
Right. Can you still consolidate the private loans to a federal loan? Or was that only for a short period of time?
You can't mix them. You can't mix and match, I don't think.
When Obama was president there for like a year, I know that you could consolidate all of your loans, including private loans, into a federally backed loan at 6.8% interest, of course. And I know that was going on years ago. This was obviously years ago. I never did. I was so close to paying them off at that time that I just paid them off and didn't worry about it. But I know I had 4 loans in total. It's weird how they break it up because they can break it up every year or by semester or however they want to do it.
Yeah, mine are broken up by semester.
Yeah, and that's fucking insane.
It's not good. But I was looking up, to keep it on Russia, I guess, how corrupt Russia is versus how corrupt the Ukraine is. And I think they're only separated by about like 4 points on the corruption scale of whatever this scale is that this, organization ranks countries on. And so when Russia first invaded Ukraine, everybody was rah, 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 we stand with Ukraine. And it's basically, saying, rah, 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 we stand with one mob group over another mob group. Or one, like drug cartel over another drug cartel. So it's not really, it's still bad, I guess. But, we're giving all of this, like, money and weapons, and it's a corrupt country.
It is. And people were shouting from the top, from the embankments saying, they're corrupt as shit. And then people were, booing them down.
Yeah, you hate human life.
Yeah. And it's like, Ukraine's the most corrupt country in Europe, right? Supposedly. Yeah. That was what they were saying.
But that's, I guess to be clear and to split hairs a little bit, the government is corrupt. That doesn't mean the average everyday citizen is necessarily corrupt.
No, yeah, of course.
So it's still, if Russia's committing war crimes, you can't say, well, they don't count if it's a corrupt country. It only doesn't count if they're only committing war crimes against politicians. But if you're doing it against the citizens, they didn't really ask for that.
Well, we've talked about this before. I know enough to know that I don't know what the fuck is going on. Because we don't hear any Russian news sources. We only hear American propaganda.
Well, and it'd be a full-time job to try and get down to the bottom of, or you would have had to have already had an intimate knowledge of the Russian, Ukrainian, Crimea whole history, right? Like if you specialized in that era and in that national like politics of that region, you could probably very easily and succinctly tell the average person, you and me, like what's going on. But for you or I to try and figure out what's going on, that'd be hours and hours of research.
I don't even know if it'd be hours. Even at the end of hours and hours, I don't know if we would even know then. There's so much disinformation.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, in general, it would take a couple hours to try and figure out where else you need to look to figure out what you need to figure out. So, like, even just the initial, like, what do I need to know session of finding things out is too much time for me to, like, dive into it.
Right.
And not to say that it's not worthwhile to figure out why people are dying. It's just I don't have the time.
Well, I mean, we don't have any control over it, and it doesn't matter who you vote for, or there's no method to do anything about it.
No, and we talked last episode about protests, and protests don't really change much.
No, think of Black Lives Matter, and a good portion of Minneapolis burned to the fucking ground, and what has changed, meaningfully changed?
Absolutely nothing. They had this huge, big cry to defund the Minneapolis police. As far as I know, they're still funded.
Right. They haven't even done major overhauls in how they're structured or their training regimen differences.
Nope.
Or anything,
So, and this is what I wanted to ask you last episode, and I didn't because we were talking about other things. But if protesting doesn't work, outside of, grabbing a buzz headline or something, because we talked about Occupy Wall Street not changing anything, and we talked about some of the other protests that haven't changed anything. How does the average citizen then enact change?
I mean, I don't know if that's an appropriate topic to talk about in public. You know what I mean?
Let's say within the legal perusal of the Constitution.
Within the legal perusal of the Constitution, it's very difficult because if you look at the history of the United States, at least to my knowledge and my understanding of it, there's never been major societal changes without death and violence. So if you look at the initial Roe versus Wade decision back in 1972, that came as an end result of thousands of women dying in back alley abortions, and the public outrage that caused was responded to by legalizing abortion in a back way, because politicians then were just as corrupt and foolish as they are now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what has to, that's what I mean by that,
Well, yeah.
Bad things have to happen consistently over time.
So
our structure to change.
Are you saying that the politicians that overturned Roe v. Wade just forgot or didn't have their aides bother to look up how Roe v. Wade came into being? Like, are they legitimately telling the American population they want more women to die before they'll do anything else with the abortion thing?
I think so. I don't think they care. It's been long enough in the past to where the only people who remember it are the women who were of age in 1972.
Well, and we know that history can very, very easily be co-opted by somebody else.
Absolutely.
With as your pronunciation, Sakakawea.
Yes.
Or even the 50-star American flag. Those are two different things that kind of got romanticized over time.
Yes.
Because nobody stood up and stopped them from making history their own or from flat out fucking lying.
Well, this is there's been talk for years amongst Republicans of overturning the Voters' Rights Act and of overturning the various rulings that ended segregation and things like that. Because the people who are affected by that negatively aren't alive anymore.
Yes.
Mostly. My mother remembers before Roe versus Wade, but she's old now. You know, there's not a lot of those people left anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have turned very sour as a result of their lifetime experience. And they don't really care about young people for the most part, in my, you know, at least from what I see. You know, they don't give a shit.
Yeah, and most politicians are so old that they don't even remember what it was like to be young. But I did see somebody was suggesting an 18-year term limit on the Supreme Court.
That would be interesting.
Did you see that?
No, I did not.
Okay, I don't remember who, but somebody was somebody in the government, and I think they might have even been a Republican, was kind of offering up the idea of putting term limits on Supreme Court justices.
It's a well-known secret that a lot of the members of government, including Supreme Court, are borderline senile.
Yeah.
You know, there's some that are senile. Dianne Feinstein comes to mind. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the end was pretty commonly known to be kind of not with it anymore.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, obviously, right? And they're just so old. And it's, you know, not a slam on old people.
I mean, it kind of is.
Who are experienced. No, it's not. It's just
no.
Your mental faculties aren't all there. There's a reason why you don't see 75-year-old fucking architects building buildings. You know what I mean?
No, I mean,
there's a reason for that.
It's a slam on old people only in the sense that everybody knows as you get older, like there's a phase in your life when you're cresting up to your peak, and then there's a phase in your life where you're coming back down from that peak. Okay,
right.
And that could be physical, it could be mental, it could be both. Everybody knows.
Everybody knows that elderly drivers are terrible.
And if you're old, what do old people always tell young people? We've got more wisdom because we've lived longer than you. Well, then fucking realize when you're too old to be a politician. Realize when you're too old to work and just fucking go and play Scrabble or Mahjong or whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
But
yeah, there's a reason why you don't see 75-year-old police officers or 75-year-old firemen.
Because they have physical aptitude tests, and they don't do that for government officials.
Right. I mean, I'm a supporter of changing the driving license laws to where you have to take minimum the written test every 5 years. Or I would not really do the written test, more of like an 8-hour refresher course every 5 years.
Yeah, maybe don't make it a test. Just it's a refresher course. And I think it's after you hit a certain age, after, you know, and I think, and I honestly believe this.
I don't think it should be after a certain age. I think it should be every 5 years. So, or,
that'd probably
20,
be better.
You take it, and then at 25, and then at 30, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. Because a lot of people don't know the little stick on the side of their steering wheel activates a blinker, a turn signal. But it's right there.
A lot of people don't know how to drive in a roundabout. A lot of people don't know how to take a fucking left turn on a road that has a flashing yellow arrow.
Very firm belief that if you cannot run for president at the age of 18, then you shouldn't be able to run for president after the age of 65. Okay, if you can put
I don't know about 65. I would say more like 70, 75. But yeah.
Let's just say, like if you're going to put a minimum cap on that thing, because you can vote at 18. So if you can't run for every office and you're putting a cap and you're limiting people and they're able to vote for something they can't participate in, you need to put an upper cap on that too, because when you get to retirement age, and this isn't true for politicians because they're like the wealthy class, they're the elite ruling class, they're a whole different thing. But when most people get to retirement age, they don't care about minimum wage laws in the sense of they just don't want them because it takes away from their Medicare somehow. You know what I mean? Like, they don't care about the young people thing anymore. They don't care about the productive members of society anymore. And I'm not saying they're not productive being retired. I'm just saying that their focus is on something completely different in their life than most other younger people. And everybody always tells young people, hey, you're going to be the change in our world. Well, then fucking retire and let me be the change. Don't stay in your position. Don't stay in your office and keep me the fuck out of it. Like, if you want me to be the change, step aside and let's get this done. But you can't, because they all have lifetime pensions and they have lifetime health care and a different health care pool than the rest of the fucking America. And there's no age out. You're never too old to be a wealthy asshat.
Right. And I talked to a retired person who was obviously older, and we were talking about minimum wage. And this person was getting very upset because they were hiring for whatever an hour at the gas station. And she just couldn't understand it because, you know, she retired at this wage and she started at this wage and all this sort of stuff, you know. And I'm like, the minimum wage is going to rise forever. Inflation is going to continue for as long as we have a dollar.
Yes.
And it needs to be whatever an hour to be competitive. And that's just the way it is.
Yep.
And then her response was, what do you want, $50 an hour minimum wage? And I looked at her and I said, eventually, if we still have the dollar, it will be $50 an hour minimum wage.
Yep.
That's how the economy works, right? If you were to go back into 1776 or 1800, let's say, and say minimum wage was going to be $7.75 an hour, they would have laughed in your face, right? So eventually, it will be $50 an hour.
Well, for multiple reasons, but we went off of the gold standard, right? And so at least when we had the gold standard, the dollar value was tied to something other than the whims of our government or how much money they decided to print, because they had to like back every dollar printed with that value in gold in the Federal Reserves.
Right. My salary now was worth a lot more 5 years ago than it is now. I can tell you that.
Well, we've had 9% inflation, the highest inflation in 40 years. And most corporate people are like ecstatic over the moon if they get a 3% cost of living increase. 3%, and that's considered good.
Oh, I know. 2.5 is considered good. Like,
we've had, and even before this 8 and 9% inflation, we had 5 and 6% inflation every fucking year, and less than half of that is considered good. That's not good. That's not a cost of living increase. That's like not even staying the same. That's sliding slowly backwards.
I know. We at my job, we got a 7.5% increase during COVID.
Yeah,
and they were pumped. You know, it's like, it's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not upset.
No, it's better than other things.
Exactly. Yeah, it's better than going down. But it's not exactly.
It's not keeping you whole.
It's not exactly equivalent of what the wages were like in the 70s, right?
Yeah. Well, there's people who have done research and figured out, you know, when like the boomers went to college and they only had to work maybe, 7 or 10 hours a week, and they could afford cost of school, cost of living, cost of food, and cost of driving, and still had some left over for fun. 7 to 10 hours a week of work at minimum wage. And today you have to work maybe 60, 70 hours a week just to afford school. That doesn't include housing or food or driving or anything, you know, so.
This was a couple years back, but one of my former apprentices got into an argument with somebody, and he texted me, so I went and involved myself in this stupid conversation. And I looked up the facts, the numbers.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, the price of college at the U of M had doubled.
Mm-hmm.
Had doubled in 10 years.
And minimum wage, though, it's doubled, right, in the past 10 years? No, that's the thing that stayed the same for 27 years or whatever.
It's not 27 years. It went up when I was 19, I think. It went from $435 or $450 up to $775 during the Bush administration.
Okay.
That
damn
it's
liberal.
been there since then. it's been there since then. Well, yeah, I mean, when my first job, I made $6.50 an hour, and that was over $2 an hour over minimum wage, and I was like, yeah, I got a great job as a teenager.
Yeah.
I'm making a third more than minimum wage. But yeah, it's kind of weird. And of course, you can't hire people at minimum wage if you want good people. That's the other thing I see people complain about.
Well, but a lot of companies don't want good people, though. They don't care. Like, they don't want good people.
They'll complain about it.
Well, they'll complain about it, but they don't care. They've got like their own little insurance thing, and they got their own little things that they can make money off of that somehow. But to kind of like bring us back
to Brittney Griner, because I didn't hear what you had to say.
What's that?
I didn't hear what you had to say about Brittney Griner.
Oh, yeah,
way off topic.
I know, but I'm a little halfway over with my cigar, so I wanted to do a little cigar check, and then I'll talk about. I have a third left, probably. Well, okay. This has been a good cigar. It's been good. I probably am probably right there with you on the thing. I'm over halfway, so that probably means I've got about a third of it left. But really good. It hasn't changed a whole lot, but I think the slightly lighter wrapper and the less intense tobacco has made this a lot smoother of a smoke, in my opinion.
Yes, it's more of a. It hasn't changed. It's a little bit lighter. It doesn't have that nice cedar note.
No, it does not.
The other one had. But it's very pleasant. It's not remarkable, but it's very pleasant.
No, this would be a good lawn mowing one, I think.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's a good sit on the porch with a drink thing.
Yeah, I would actually rather smoke the Fuma than the Edge.
Oh, I don't know if I'd rather smoke this. I like it more in many ways, but I think
I don't know if I'd rather smoke it. I like it more, but I don't know if I'd rather smoke it. I think it depends on what you're doing and maybe what you're drinking or whatnot. So
right. I'm drinking a whiskey sour right now.
Yeah,
and it's going very well.
I think if it's maybe a cooler night, you got a little fire going out in the backyard, grab the Edge Maduro. But I think I think
the Edge Maduro would be good with a cup of coffee.
Yeah. But if you're mowing the lawn or just drinking on the porch and shooting the shit, this Fuma is really good in that sense.
Yes.
Like, it's not overly remarkable, but you don't necessarily need it to be.
No, you don't need it to be wonderful. It's just good enough.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even say that. It's good.
It's good.
It's well worth the money. I would recommend, if you're going to buy a decent cigar for your humidor to have extra of, this is a good choice.
Yeah, you got 20 of them, so,
Right, yeah, for a very reasonable price. So, I don't remember what I spent, to be honest, but it wasn't bad. Cheap enough for me to buy 20.
Yes, and certainly less expensive than freeing a known arms dealer for a WNBA star.
Oh my God! Yes.
So my thoughts are: what are her stats? Is she sinking all of her shots?
She is a wife beater, a known wife beater.
Okay.
I don't know if you looked into that or not.
No, I didn't.
She does have a history of domestic violence, apparently.
Okay.
Not that affects her charges on marijuana in Russia, but
yeah. So I guess my initial thought, without knowing the wife beating thing, was, and I had said this earlier, but we don't need another WNBA star running free in America, and we certainly don't need another wife beater running free in America. So it really doesn't affect my life in any way, shape, or form to keep her over there.
Right.
And I'd rather have the arms dealer in prison than running around Russia. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. We've got enough domestic violence already here. We don't need to add another one to that. We don't need to import it. Yeah. We don't need the Russian variety, the Russian prison variety.
Yeah. Interesting.
So what do you think? everybody has kind of made her into this like American hero now.
That always happens, doesn't it?
But she broke the law over there. And
Yes.
you don't have to agree with the law over there, but we're all American voters. We can't change the Russian laws.
We can't even change our own laws.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But like what are we gonna do? Like, why is it such a big deal? She got busted. She broke the fucking law. She had the entirety of human knowledge in her fucking pocket on her cell phone, and she didn't bother to look up, am I gonna get absolutely destroyed for 9 years if I bring weed into this country? Like, not a lighter, weed. Like, that's, you don't even, if you're flying international, you probably don't even want to bring just tobacco over. You don't want to bring any driving into California, they actually stop you at the border and ask if you have any produce in the car. Like, that's how fucked up California is. So it's like, you're not even going to bring a lemon in your carry-on to Russia. Like, you don't bring foreign produce or goods of any type. Tobacco, cotton, weed, LSD, bananas. You just don't do that. You don't bring that kind of stuff into foreign countries unless you are absolutely certain of the laws.
You don't travel with a lot of that stuff between states.
That's the whole point.
Let alone countries. I mean,
that's the whole point.
Let alone countries. I truly believe, and I do not know this for a fact, it is just something that I think, and I do believe it, that she thought that her wealth and fame would protect her no matter what. And It didn't. And she got caught with her pants off, so to speak, and she is paying the unfortunate consequence of that.
Yeah. And her wife, right, wrote a sob story letter to Biden. And then I remember like Biden didn't respond like instantaneously. And then the wife was like crying foul to the media, like, I wrote a letter 20 minutes ago and Biden hasn't gotten back to me. And, one, your wife broke the fucking law in a foreign country. So that's on her. Two, I don't know if Biden's the busiest man in America, but he's got a lot on his plate, regardless of if you like him as a person or politics or whatever. Like, you've seen those pictures of presidents when they're sworn in and presidents when they leave the office. They've aged like 80 years in that 4-year span. So there's like, I know there's stress there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like, how many of my friends can I give kickbacks to and stuff? But there's stress there. Like, whatever that stress is, like, it's not an easy, like, walk in the park job. I'm not trying to make excuses for, really bad presidents and politicians in general, because they all suck. But you can't think that somehow because your wife broke the law in a foreign country that the president of the United States is going to drop everything else and free your spouse because she plays basketball in a women's league. And it would be the same thing if, like, I don't know, because Kobe Bryant died, but I don't know another, like, NBA star. But it wouldn't matter if it was an NBA or WNBA or tennis or golf or pickleball or whatever, baseball. They went over there and broke the law. I can't, like, what do you think the president is supposed to do? Like, they weren't ambushed on the, what was it, the Lusitania or something?
Lusitania.
Like, they weren't caught up in something. They just actively broke the law.
Right. And it's hard to, I don't know Brittney's travel regimen, but when I start packing for a trip, I start with a completely empty suitcase.
And then you do underwear first. I gotta have enough underwear. I'm on a 3-day trip, but I'm packing enough underwear in case I shit myself for 10 days straight. I still got a clean one.
Right.
It's like, I've never shit myself for 10 days straight, but goddamn it, I'm going for 3 days. Better have 11 pairs of underwear.
My big thing is extra socks and extra, like, at least one extra pair of shoes, just in case I get into some crazy oil
Mosh
soaked.
pit situation.
Yeah, exactly. I do not want wet feet for my trip. But anyway, yeah, it's like, of course. Oh, it's accidentally in there. My ass. My ass is
Yeah.
accidentally in there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
my
just,
ass.
and she basically owned up to it in the Russian court of law. And, they were like, well, she had to sign all this stuff that nobody explained to her. She's in fucking Russia. They don't have the due process we have. You brought in an illegal substance in Russia's eyes. They're not going to bend over backwards to make sure you have a translator for the fucking stuff you're signing. Like, you need to find that on your own.
Yeah, but she went over there to profiteer.
That's on you.
But she went over there to make money.
Well, yeah.
Obviously, And it's just the way it is, I worked with guys that used to work in the Gulf. And, you don't fuck around when you're in Saudi Arabia working on an oil rig. You don't fuck around. You follow the rules. And they even said, like, Saudi Arabia set up little American villages, and you can buy liquor in the village. But if you leave that village drunk, you're getting arrested. So you don't fuck around, right?
This is common sense stuff.
Yeah. For us it is, but for her, being a wealthy person, right? That's really what I think. She's a wealthy person.
Oh, yes.
Who has a lot of power in our system. And she thinks that she thought she could get away with anything anywhere. Because in America, she can. She can run somebody over on the road. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Not to her.
And not to most of the American governmental system, right? Oh, no, you're a famous...
Not to the wealthy people. Not
famous
to the
sports star.
Class.
Who cares? And that's the same thing. Like, you know what? If you or I went over to Russia and we brought our weed vape pen over there and they caught us, and then we got our one phone call from the gulag or whatever. I don't know if they even give you one phone call. And we called our spouses. And then both of our Sarahs wrote Joe Biden and said, my God, my husband got busted on weed charges in Russia. You gotta save him. That wouldn't even make it to Joe Biden's desk. It wouldn't make it past his first aid.
No.
His
first
intern.
For some reason, to travel to Russia together, and for some reason I brought a marijuana pen. I don't smoke marijuana. But let's just say I had a marijuana pen. Because you were with me, they'd arrest us both.
Yeah.
And we'd be conspirators.
Yes. And our wives' letters would go unanswered from the media and from Biden. The only reason Biden answered it was because the media was in an uproar about it, and his approval rating was dipping.
Right. So he's got to be pro-marijuana, even though he signed the drug bill back in the day.
He's got to be Uncle Joe.
He's
got to be Uncle Joe.
He's, again, we have a president who has no position on this either. He's the drug warrior. He's old school Democrat. He's a Dixiecrat.
Yeah, and he hates abortion.
More black people in prison than anybody else in America.
So he probably celebrated when they overturned Roe v. Wade. But then now for his public face, he's got to be, well, it's the greatest travesty. I'm not going to do anything about it, but it's a travesty.
Yeah, 15 years ago, he was 100% against abortion. So at 65, he was against it. Now at 80, he's for it. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, unless you have arthritis and you like, or not abortion, but like weed, right? Like you have arthritis and you like the weed because it soothes your joints.
Oh, sure. I have an aunt who caught blood cancer. I say caught, but she has blood cancer, and now she uses marijuana for the pain. And I'm guessing that she's pro-marijuana now.
Probably, yeah.
Probably. I'm guessing, since she's a user.
Probably not vehemently against it.
Probably not. I'm guessing her husband's not against it either.
Yeah.
Or her children, right? But more and more of that will happen with that issue in America, I think.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Well, it's easy to be against something until that something happens to you.
Right.
And then the thing that you were against ends up saving the day.
Well, that's a lot of issues in America, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, weed, abortion.
Gay marriage back in the day. I remember that one, too. Yeah. Nobody gave a shit about it until one more gay people came out, and they're like, oh, I know gay people. Of course you do. Don't be a fool.
Yeah, everybody's known them.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, do you hate your cousin whoever? Like, no, I don't. All right, well, let's not make that person's life worse.
Did you one of the funniest? I don't know, not one of the funniest memes, but a meme that I got a good chuckle out of was the Greeks invented the orgy, and the Romans discovered that from the Greeks, and they were so excited because they realized you could actually add women to the orgies.
I did not see that. That's good though. That is good. The favorite meme I ever saw was the "Don't tax my lord. My lord's worked hard for his money," and they have like the serfs,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I always thought that was a good one.
Yeah. My favorite, like,
true
feudal kind of, it's not a meme, but from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, when King Arthur is riding through the countryside and there's like the two like English peasants just like slopping mud around. Yep. And the guy's like, well, who are you? He's like, well, I'm Arthur. I'm king of the Brits. King of the who? You're Brits. Well, I didn't vote for you.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, Monty Python's a whole nother. We could have a whole episode about that.
We could have like probably a whole 5 episodes on that, but go on.
Oh, I was gonna say that I always liked how they had the horse trotting.
Yeah,
the ridiculous
with the coconuts.
Horse trotting.
Yeah,
with the coconuts. It's just so.
What are
so
those?
Stupid.
Coconuts. Where do they come from? I don't know. Maybe a sparrow brought them. European or African? What's the average airspeed velocity? You got to know a whole big thing about that. But it was funny because they didn't have to pay for horses or horse wranglers on the film. Like it was a good way around things where they turned it into something highly inventive, which a lot of movies these days don't do. But
well, that's a separate argument too. I know you are a lot more knowledgeable about this than I, but CGI ruined a lot of wonderful effects and inventive uses, in my opinion. What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is practical effects are always better. And you can do lots of crazy things. So my favorite film of all time is Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain. And it's Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz, and it's got the score by Clint Mansell and the Kronos Quartet. And it's fucking phenomenal because it deals with, most of Aronofsky's films deals with obsession in one way or shape or form or the other. And this one is kind of like the obsession of dying or death or not dying, right? Like wanting to prolong your life and not being okay with dying. But it's really crazy because it takes place in 3 different time periods. Spanish conquistadors, kind of, like the modern time in the early 2000s. And then far in the future where he's like flying through space in a sphere that has a tree, and the tree is alive and giving him oxygen, and he's trying to reach Xibalba, which is pertinent because it transcends back to the conquistador days, because the Mayans believed in Xibalba as being their afterlife. And so he's trying to go there. But Aronofsky has all of these amazingly stunning visuals of space and of this Xibalba being a galaxy or gas cloud or something, and all of this phenomenal stuff. And so how he made all of those things, the background plates, right, which normally you would do with CGI. You'd put the actor in front of a green screen, which is what he did. He put Hugh Jackman with this tree in front of a green screen. But instead of superimposing CGI, what he did was he went and took microscopic, he put his camera and attached it to a microscope, and he filmed bacteria and things like interacting with one another, and then he colorized it. He just colorized it. So you've got this like microscopic natural thing happening, and he's like, bam, that's my space, because it's fucking nature, and it's organic. And when you watch the film, it doesn't look CGI. It looks different because it isn't CGI, but it's the micro projected at the macro. like at the hugest level possible. So you're seeing these like super like tiny, almost atomic level interactions, and he's using that as the space background. And it just looks phenomenal. And if you did it with CGI, you would know, and it wouldn't have the same impact. Because the whole movie is about life and death and, like interactions between organisms.
Interesting. I've never seen the film. Shocker, I know, but that's good.
But I mean, so that's, that's my stance is, and you can do great things with CGI, but you can't. But I think CGI is a tool, just like anything else. Just like a different lens on your camera is a tool. Just like editing is a tool. Just like sound design is a tool. Like you can't expect it to carry the entire film. You have to have CGI plus story plus the other things. You can't just say, well, we're going to have a bunch of people in front of a green screen and then we're going to fix everything else later and we'll put all this stuff in. I don't think you can do that. And the way they did The Mandalorian, because we watched a lot of behind the scenes stuff, they used a video game engine, and instead of attaching the the field of focus or the point of view to, the game controller, they attached it to their film camera, and then they projected all of the background onto these big, huge monitors. So the actors actually saw the environment they were performing in. And for perspective, all the perspective was tied to the camera's location on the set. So they mapped everything out, and they had, like geolocators on the camera. So the camera, like the pictures in the background would shift to match the camera, much like a video game does when you're in like a first-person shooter or you're roaming around. Like the background shifts to your perspective as the player. And so They just made the camera the player, but the actors could still see what was happening, and they could project at a high enough resolution that it was realistic looking, so that you got all the ambient light from the monitors, so you didn't have to go fix anything in post. It was almost as if they were actually there, but they were pushing technology further and further to the limit, so you don't have to do the green screen stuff later. You can have the actors feel like they're in that environment, and you can have the ambient lighting reflect that environment that they're in, because what the camera thinks is that you're actually in that environment. So,
sure.
And they sent the camera crews out with these crazy rigs to go film all these background things from all these different angles, so that they could have everything be processed in real time. And I think that is vastly superior to CGI.
I've never even heard that. I didn't know that at all.
It's phenomenal. But you can do crazy things with CGI. And you can do things that you could never, ever possibly do. And it's opened up filmmaking to a lot of great, 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 great things. But it's also opened the door to a lot of shitty things. So, I'm for CGI if you know how to use it. But when I was in film school, and it was right when video editing became a thing on a computer. So it's called non-linear editing, which basically means you can go and jump around and edit wherever you want. Not like with film, where you have to like edit in time, like in the linear story that you're filming, right? So you get the film reel, and you want Jack Nicholson to open the door to the Overlook Hotel. Well, you have to grab that film reel and edit that as it's happening, because you can't go back and like cut and paste things without making a cut and actually like taping the film together. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these programs had kind of presets. And I don't know if you do anything computer-wise where it might have like a preset, or it's almost like a template. So if you go to PowerPoint and you're like, I need to make a presentation, there's a whole bunch of like templates that PowerPoint has and offers you. It's the same thing with
Go template.
Yes, it's the same thing with film. Is you can do a preset is what they call it, and it's like an effect that the program just builds in. Well, if you do any film editing, you know all those presets because you've played around with them just in your own free time. And they're a great starting point, but that's the whole thing, is it's a starting point. And if you don't make that preset into what you need for that time, everybody will look at it who knows film and knows film editing and say, oh, they're using the iMovie preset. Like that's the preset. Like they're not even Like, they didn't do anything. That's just a computer preset. So, and it's the same with CGI. Like, if you don't make it match what you need it to do, or if you don't use it in a way that is exactly how you intend it, and if you're just expecting that to carry a bad film, like, it's not going to do that.
It seems like a lot of films do that. Or try to do that.
A lot of films do that. And I guess, like, the newest film that I'm excited to see, because I've heard a lot of, like, really great things, and then I've heard some maybe more grounded things, is the new Predator movie.
Oh, Prey.
And I guess the character development is lacking, but it's got a competent director, and it's got some really great visuals, and it's got some good things. But where it's kind of lacking is maybe like story and character development, but it's not as bad as some of the other, story character development things where, the female lead, because this one has a female lead, where the female lead is like just good from birth, right? And there's no training required, and they can just go toe to toe with anybody. But there's still like some shortfalls, I guess. I haven't seen it, but I'm excited to see it because I guess it's a good film. It's not a great film from what I've heard. But a lot of the news media is like, oh, it's the greatest Predator film since the first one. And it's like, are you all forgetting the second one? Because that one is pretty good too. So,
right. There we go. I officially am done, by the way.
Oh, you're done. All right. I've got maybe like an inch and a half left. But I think,
see, and I put it down when it started to burn my hand.
Okay, so I think
it was good all the way to the end.
Let's do final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up here. So, I think this one was much better than the other one, which is surprising because this is a Fuma.
I know.
But you know what? I like this one better, and it might be personal preference, but I like this one. The other one's good too.
It's also setting. The other one, the main edge, would probably be better in winter. I think. I
think so too. Possibly. That's what I kind of thought, like a nice fall evening one.
Yeah. This was very pleasant.
I like this one quite a bit. So.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Well, I think we've got a couple more Rocky Patels in the future, but thank you for listening to our Fuma episode, and we will see you next time for episode 21.
Have a good day.